The last time I recorded and posted a video, Manchester City still were a decent team in the European stage, which really does put into perspective just how long it has been. Nosferatus, where have you been? Well, since you asked, I have been doing papers and having a mild case of a really bad cold, but now that I'm finishing things off, that's just the nice stuff. Now in this video we are taking in what is probably one of the most important matters for tanking and overall PvP in Trailmakers, and that being the Aiming Servo and all that matters that it does imply. And well, the block was surrounded by a lot of hype as it was announced, as immediately a lot of people saw its potential and went over to the drawing board, and of course, I am in that list. As I even listed a few things that would be possible now that this new server would make controls incredibly easier to handle, especially in tank combat where you just won't have to grow a third hand to control it whenever you are in some of these more tricky situations. Stabilization would be far easier to obtain, as the challenging systems that we currently use would no longer be necessary, since the camera stabilization by itself would already do all of that work for pretty much no space and in a much simpler manner. It would also be very nice that we could be able to really neatly mess around with depression and the overall angle movements that the cannon is able to obtain, as that is something that this new servo is able to do. You are able to limit the direction of how much it moves in each direction, meaning that I finally can simulate perfectly the average 4 degrees of depression that Soviet tanks had. And when it released, it encountered mixed reactions with a few issues at hand. The Aiming Servo had some really odd interactions with weight, as weight added on top or beneath of it would quickly make it pretty damn unstable, just making it utterly unusable for turrets or weapon systems that dare to surpass even a weight ratio of 100 kilograms, and like in a few circumstances, which was really goddamn odd, I'm not going to lie. Camera work was also notoriously bad with it, as controls felt very slippery, and for some reason, no matter how much you move the camera up or down, the servo only follows up to a certain point vertically, which means that it was pretty difficult to aim down sights with it. It also has issues whenever the weight, even if not overwhelming, was distributed in a way that made it just a little bit unbalancing. Perfect example that we all experienced was with a tank cannon, as handling a big stick that is an anti-cannon was often enough to make the servo actually struggle, even if it weighed very little. That being the main reason as to why in some of my models after the update I always used a twin servo model to actually hold the cannon in place. Only one was not reliable enough, simply put. And as some dear friends pointed out in the server, in the past the devs did seemingly clamp down the boot on mods that allowed for fully automatic mouse aiming servos, leading me to believe that maybe this was all intentional, that the aiming servos would be yet another piece of logic that would have to fit in a bigger system to then achieve a mouse control turret, instead of it being the whole package that allowed to easily search for such solutions. Maybe, just maybe, this is by design, that such an easy solution should not be expected since they did put it down in the past. Early model that I had talked about earlier, as you may see over here, it makes use of another change that was brought with this update, specifically to the distance sensors, as right now we are able to very specifically fidget around with where the sensor point comes along, which then with this I have an aiming servo that's attached right over here with quite limited positions, and as they detect the movement on this small structure over here, they send a few inputs to a half-limb servo over here. This one's at 100% strength, but the model that I showed earlier, those gyros, only had about 50. and it does a half decent job. Like, this is no direct input of the Aiming Servo whatsoever, and it does a pretty damn good job at it. And I was looking at further development of this tech as I talked with some people and brought discussion into my server, the Imperial Forge, which, if you are interested in a community that embraces tanking, military trailmakers, cool propaganda posters and trail memes, you should check it out. The link for the entrance is left at the pinned comment down below. So, I do suppose that I'm just going to be left here messing around with this stuff, trying to figure out just how exactly I can get this thing to work properly. What is this? And we have a hotfix coming. It does say here that they are trying to get it out this week. If it's not this week, then next year. I suppose because of Christmas holiday, of course. But are they actually going to be able to crank it out? And all of the weight issues are nowhere to be found, as even this very overloaded overweight turret is able to quite finally control itself. The camera actually has access to the full range of motion, and as you may see, this turret that has almost 1.5 tons of weight to it with just nothing but weight blocks is able to very finally control itself, with the gyros over here no longer fighting against the Aiming Servo and causing it to overcompensate, meaning that right now, if you have a turret that's somehow heavier than this and facing a lot of wobble, you can just get some gyros in for some dampening, and quite suddenly you have some of the good stuff. I also think it goes without saying that the issues that were plaguing tank cannons are also mostly gone, as now the big sticks that make fire tank cannons for MBT cannons are quite stable even with only a single aiming servo at its hand, meaning that they pretty much fixed everything. With this, I think it's mostly safe to say that this block is here to stay at long last. Just look at the difference in control schemes in between what an older model will require and what newer ones may require. Keep in mind that both of these have controls not only for the main turret but also some over the turret controls for weapon systems. Look at how little that requires. Much simpler, much easier. Maybe Trail Thunder came after all. The only real complaints that I still have are: number 1. Whenever using the first person view to aim down sights in camera, the cannon is not stabilized, meaning that firing at first person while on the move is a little bit tricky, demanding that instead you use a third person for you to fire on the move, since in that mode, in fact, it's going to be perfectly stabilized, meaning that camera shooting is mostly limited currently into being a more precise long-range firing while you are perfectly still. And second, close-range combat is now much more feasible, since snap decisions are far easier to acquire with no detriment to the ability to control movement, since right now you don't need a third hand, and of course having a mouse you are able to snap around much easier. And with how you can finally tune the weapon systems, you are able to be sure to make a vehicle that is incredibly responsive, that will not shit itself, and overall just have a good time. Overall, if by any chance one of the devs is watching this video, first I have to say, I am very surprised and I congratulate you for having such a response that so precisely actually fixed the issue. And well, you are doing a good job. This is all free updates that are coming over. You are doing wonderful. And as for the rest of you, I hope you all have a good one. This is all I have for you today, and I will see you at some point in the future. Bye. Actually, before I leave, I'm going to be a little bit of a rant. Subscribe to my channel, leave a like if you have actually enjoyed the video, and of course, join my Discord server again, top comment, please, pretty please. Bye.